Whenever I say certain things in my videos, I tend to upset somebody. Even though I back up my message with over 1,000 references built into my videos, testimonials, and more, someone will be upset. And at times, I get these comments from carnivores or vegans who, although are opposite ends of the dietary spectrum, have one thing in common: disagreement with the things I say. So I'm going to try to have a little fun with an informative comparison. We'll be keeping score, by the way, between these two extreme diets, analyzing the benefits of each, as well as the flawed thinking. I'm not going to convince any hardcore vegan or carnivore fanatics. It's like extremists in politics or religion. You can't have a logical conversation with extremists in any form. I reject extremism, but perhaps I can reach through to some people, if not simply entertain. So let the chaos begin. If you're new, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and also follow me on Instagram and Facebook as The Microbiome Expert. First, we need to define the two, because some people will say they are carnivore, but then go on to say they eat things like root vegetables, greens, etc. So for our purposes here, a carnivore is someone who claims to only eat foods sourced from animals. As for vegans, the same theme holds true. Upon further digging, it turns out that some consume dairy products or eggs and/or seafood once in a while. So these are forms of vegetarianism. Again, for clarity, we'll define a vegan as someone who does not, in any form, eat food sources from an animal. So let's begin with some anatomy, which right off the bat tells us that at the very least we are omnivores. Predators have eyes in the front of their faces so they can zero in on their prey. I'm pretty sure even the most devout vegan does not have eyes on the side of their head. -1 point for the vegans. Herbivores are prey. They have eyes on the sides of their heads to better keep a lookout for predators. You just can't get around this fact. Now, how we treat these animals is another story. Many animal rearing and processing practices are atrocious and questionable for one's health. But sadly, this is how the industry is to cost-effectively feed a planet overpopulated with over 8 billion people. You can find yourself a farm which practices a better option, but that comes at a cost of hassle, and the prices on these products are significantly higher. Or you can move to the country and raise your own animals. But none of this changes our evolutionary past. And speaking of our past, if you look at Paleolithic cave paintings, you don't see images of people picking berries or digging up root vegetables. Although, of course, these people were hunter-gatherers and were assuredly eating anything they could find. However, the real prize was the killing of a large herbivore, which was a source of plenty of calories and nutrients, enough to feed a group of people for an extended period of time. Their value was so high that the men risked their lives to kill them, where in comparison, there is little risk in tackling a nut or a seed. Hence the glorification of the hunt on the cave walls. -1 more point for the vegans, but -1 point for the carnivores, as well for being too brainwashed to realize that our ancestors were not hunter-gatherers. My next point is in regards to fats. We need fats for many things. It's a dense source of calories when you're living in a world of feast or famine. They are necessary for the health of our organs, in particular the brain. Dense animal sources of healthy fats such as bone marrow and whole fish is most likely how we developed the brains we have today. Well, at least for some of us. In the vegan diet, there is no dense source of these fats. Herbivores graze all day long to ingest enough energy to survive. Carnivores can consume a lot of energy in one sitting, leaving time for other productive activities. Any oils and fats a vegan will use today are a part of our industrialized society. To get enough nutrients to survive in the wild, a vegan would have to graze all day long like a cow or a goat. And to top this all off, humans have a gallbladder, along with most predators, while most herbivores do not have a gallbladder. What's a gallbladder for? It's a storage site for bile, so it can be released in higher quantities in response to a high-fat meal. -1 more point for the vegans. Another nutrient consideration is vitamin B12. There are other nutrient deficiencies one could debate in the vegan diet, but B12 is all we need to discuss. In a vegan diet, there is essentially a 100% deficiency in B12. If you search online for 1 minute, you'll be bombarded with cautions in regards to B12 and vegans. This is an outright admission that a vegan diet is not congruent with our genome. Even this vegan website here says things like this, and this. I'm pretty sure as we evolved over the millennia, health food stores weren't available as we migrated from one location to another. Minus 1 more point for B12. And this vegan site tries to profit off this known deficiency by selling their very own B12 supplement and mentions pregnancy complications, which I'll touch on. If you're 70 years old or have type 2 diabetes or liver disease, etc., and you want to go on a vegan diet for an extended period of time for your specific health needs, I completely understand that. But if you're trying to become pregnant or are raising children, then a vegan diet is not a good idea. In fact, it may be a terrible idea. If you are a vegan woman and you struggle with amenorrhea, the loss of your period, that's a signal that your body is not receiving enough carbon inputs to sustain a new life. That's a red flag. I have seen many weak vegans at conferences over the years who struggle to do basic daily tasks. You have to separate your ideology from the reality of our biochemistry. Minus 1 more point for putting your children in jeopardy. Here in this YouTube comment I received after posting my video as shown here is an instance where someone has separated ideology from reality. When taken too far, this extremism can lead to bad outcomes and even death. I don't want to speak poorly of the dead, but as a public warning, this vegan influencer died due to malnourishment. She was 39. Now, each of us is free to make our own decisions, for better or for worse. But she had millions of viewers, millions, and she was touting extremism. I guess extremism sells. Okay, so the score is not looking very good for the vegans now, but don't go anywhere yet. Let's now get critical of the carnivores. First, we start with a comment on my YouTube channel from my most vocal vegan viewer. I will give her credit because as far as I can recall, she's respectful and appears moderated in her opinions, which is far more than I can say for the carnivore comments. Here we have a classic example of a YouTube comment from a carnivore fanatic when I say anything other than the carnivore diet is the best thing ever. Here I'm told that I am full of shit, even though I include over 1,000 scientific papers in one way or another in my many videos. I receive tons of name calling and stupid comments from these folks. Check out my video entitled, "The Angry Carnivore Fanatics Make the Dumbest YouTube Comments." So, minus 1 point for the carnivores for having anger issues. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and recommend to friends and family. Also, if you're feeling extra generous, hit the super thanks below. Now, I do get plenty of comments like this one from carnivores attesting to how it has helped them. I'm not going to dispute someone's individual results. I believe them. Although I will say during my consultations, many times I've heard where someone had been on a carnivore diet and they quickly went downhill, or went downhill eventually with time. For those who respond well to the carnivore diet, you have to ask yourself a couple of important questions. 1, is it healthy for the long term? And 2, what exactly are you achieving with it? Like other radical diets, like the low FODMAPs diet, see that video. If you have a dysbiotic microbiome and a hyper-vigilant immune system, you will react to more plant foods. Taking away the plant foods that the rest of us are able to eat just fine is not the answer. Dietary restriction is a huge problem in my patient base. You will find in time that your options will narrow as your system becomes more dysregulated. Doesn't correcting the dysbiosis and immune dysregulation sound more intelligent than just eating animal-based foods? For more on this important concept, see my 2-part series on autoimmune disease. So this dedication to the carnivore diet can have its consequences too. For example, let's consider gout. When one has gout, the standard recommendation is to avoid alcohol, red meat, and seafood. things that are high in purines. Gout is a condition of high uric acid. You may not know this, but the gut is responsible for about 1/3 of the uric acid excretion. And many studies show that the gut microbiome is dysbiotic in those with hyperuricemia. And what do these studies show? Significant reductions in the health-promoting, butyrate-producing bacteria I talk about in all my videos. These bacteria are not fed with protein. Their fuel consists of locked-up sugars that we can't access, what we have come to call prebiotics. You can see more about this in detail in my videos on liver health and cardiovascular disease. 1 point minus for the carnivores. Another consideration is iron. There are a ton of papers on iron and disease and aging. It is thought to be one of the reasons why women live slightly longer than men. Women regularly lose iron during menstruation up until the age of 51 on average. Iron, as we know, is pro-oxidative, and in a high animal-based diet, the heme iron will be easily absorbed. Whether it's studies on children dying from iron overdose, hemochromatosis, cardiovascular disease, cancer, or phlebotomy, there is plenty of evidence. I present more evidence in my videos on opportunistic pathogens and emotional stress. You see, the bad bacteria love iron, and they're always searching for a way to get their little bacterial hands on it. If you give them the opportunity, they will take it and drive disease, hence the name opportunistic pathogens. So if you are dysbiotic, then you'll feed the bad actors, which will drive more inflammation and immune dysregulation. Minus 1 more point for the carnivores. And a great way to drive dysbiosis is with the carnivore diet. Although this carnivore fanatic also comments that I'm an idiot and there are no studies. So let's take a cursory look at some studies. Perhaps all of these researchers are idiots as well. These authors state, quote, a suitable ratio between protein and carbohydrate, or even a low-protein diet, is recommended based on the evidence that excessive protein intake adversely affects health. Supplying high and undigested proteins will encourage pathogens and protein-fermenting bacteria to increase the risk of diseases. And who are these encouraged pathogens? The ones I talk about all the time, like E. coli, Klebsiella, Fusobacterium, and more. Or there is this paper which states, quote, protein fermentation mainly occurs in the distal colon when carbohydrates get depleted and results in the production of potentially toxic metabolites such as ammonia, amines, phenols, and sulfides. I mentioned toxic metabolites here. This paper touches on the very important concept of pH within the gut. For much more on this, see this video. And which bacteria are the primary protein fermenters they highlight? Names like Fusobacterium and Peptostreptococcus, both highly implicated in colorectal cancer. See that video. And other names like Klebsiella, E. coli, Enterobacter, Streptococcus, etc. All bad actors I mention all of the time. And since we're name dropping, let's continue. As I said, if your immune system is hypervigilant, you may be high histamine, for example, because of the dysbiosis in the gut. So not only is the abundance of bad actors driving inflammation while they are in charge of the microbiome, but they are also driving excess biogenic amine production, histamine being the best known. Let's take a quote from this 2024 paper which states, the common microbes that produce biogenic amines through decarboxylation of amino acids include lactobacillus, dominant in dysbiosis by the way, Leuconostoc, Lactococcus, Enterobacter, a known opportunistic pathogen, Escherichia, that's where E. coli comes from, Enterococcus, highly pathogenic bad guys, Pediococcus, Pseudomonas, a known opportunistic pathogen, Streptococcus, a well-known genus of many opportunistic pathogens like strep throat, Staphylococcus, known opportunistic pathogens like staph infection, Shigella, more pathogens, Salmonella, as in Salmonella, and Bacillus species. Lactobacillus species are known to be mainly responsible for histamine, which you know well, tyramine, as in food poisoning, and putrescine, as in putrid, rotting flesh, production in foods, while Enterobacteriaceae and Enterococcus species are known to contribute to the production of putrescine, cadaverine, as in cadaver, same idea as putrescine, and tyrine in foods. Not listed here is K. pneumoniae, which is a prolific histamine producer. These are the opportunistic pathogens I talk about in all of my videos. These bad actors dominate the dysbiotic microbiome. So, not only are they driving inflammation, they are producing histamine and other biogenic amines. None of the good bacteria I promote were listed here. And then there is this which states, quote, the amount of protein in a given meal influences how much protein reaches the colon, where it can drive microbial processes such as protein fermentation. Then they mention at the bottom, highlighted in yellow, IBD, colorectal cancer, and metabolic diseases. Here are those videos of mine, colorectal cancer I showed you earlier. So what's going on with this amount of protein which can reach the colon? Invariably, some amount of protein will make its way past your small intestine and enter the colon, the amount of which depends on several factors. Watch these videos here for much more information. With the exception of a few species, the good guys do not ferment protein, but the bad guys love it. And in the process of this fermentation, harmful compounds can be produced. Just one is hydrogen sulfide. And this proven harmful compound, along with the branched-chain fatty acids, cresols, and others, are products of protein fermentation without adequate controls in place, like carb fermentation, resulting in what these authors say is, quote, is an altered microbiome favoring a potentially pathogenic and pro-inflammatory microbiota. From a different set of authors, they also talk about those toxic compounds. You're welcome to read this in every paper I present in all of my videos. Everything is in full disclosure. I could do this all day long, but these authors say, quote, it is generally accepted that carbohydrate fermentation results in beneficial effects for the host because of the generation of short-chain fatty acids, whereas protein fermentation is considered detrimental for the host's health. Protein fermentation mainly occurs in the distal colon, when carbohydrates get depleted and results in the production of potentially toxic metabolites such as ammonia, amines, phenols, and sulfides. Then we have this paper looking at the fermentation of substrate, fuel, in the microbiomes of healthy controls as compared to subjects with schizophrenia. They consistently found significantly higher markers of protein fermentation in those with schizophrenia. For more information on the connection between the gut microbiome to brain health, see these videos here. In this intervention study, the high-protein, low-carb diet is highlighted in Table 2 and resulted in marked decreases in Roseburia and E. rectale, two superstar taxa, and significant increases in toxic compounds produced by protein fermentation, shown in Table 5, which led the authors to conclude, quote, after a 4-week weight loss diet that were high in protein but reduced in total carbohydrates and fiber resulted in a significant decrease in fecal cancer protective metabolites and increased concentrations of hazardous metabolites. Long-term adherence to such diets may increase risks of colonic disease. So, -1 point for all of these other fellow idiot researchers who showed the dangers of protein fermentation in the lower gut. Eating a carnivore diet, which is obviously very high in animal fat, can also cause a temporary increase in gut permeability. There is proof that a high-fat diet, especially high in saturated fats, has been found to cause dysbiosis, inflammation, and LPS translocation into the body. Spikes in LPS, aka endotoxin, in the blood have been seen in multiple studies following a high-fat meal in healthy subjects. There's enough evidence to show that the process of absorbing a high-fat load is damaging to the cells that line our gut. The increased requirement for the chylomicron-led absorption of lipids distends intercellular space during the process, which seems to loosen the bonds between the enterocytes. And although this is a temporary event, it allows quantities of LPS to enter circulation. And the key culprits for this inflammation and destruction are long-chain fatty acids. Gut permeability is the key that links gut inflammation with systemic immune dysregulation. For more on this, See my important video on gut permeability. Perhaps I can help you with your needs as I did here. Here is a testimonial which you can find on my YouTube channel. Again, all in full disclosure. Following our consultation and given time and dedication, you can read about the amazing progress made here by applying my philosophies. I'll just read half. Quote, anyone convinced that Carnivore is addressing your inflammation, I would urge you all to listen to Guy. I was a carnivore for over 8 years and his work drastically improved my life. I spent over $300,000 trying to solve my inability to tolerate foods other than meat. Clearly, we're all omnivores. The question is, what mix is right for you? There are obviously general themes which apply to all of us, like whole foods, low stress, avoidance of antibiotics and PPIs if possible, and more. The treatment of animals for slaughter can be quite outrageous. But then again, massive monoculture farming with all of its poisons is terrible for every living thing, to include the microbiome of the soil. On a personal level, your needs are your needs. What is your age, your size, your level of physical activity, your personal taste for foods? Is your goal to be a bodybuilder, or is your goal one of longevity? These are two very different sets of signals in the body. One is grow and become robust. One is to survive the day. See my video on healthy aging for more. I've helped former vegans and former carnivores alike, and I'm happy to help you. Watch my videos and view my testimonials until your heart is content. And when you're ready, I invite you to reach out to me. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe. Also, somewhere around here, you can go to my website where you can schedule a consultation with me. You can also view the protocols, and here, you can watch the next video.